Welcome back everybody. So today we have Dawnbreaker plus 12 on Mythic, and today I'm doing Master of Harmony. So these are my item levels, my gear, my stats, and my talents for this run. Last time I did it, it was on Shado Pan, but I decided to do this one as Master of Harmony just to show that you can tank these mythics on both specs if you want. Here I just roll in, try to get some aggro on both. Exploding keg to mitigate some damage here. As you can see, interrupts are important here because this Shadow Mage casts a Night Bolt on the Shaman, and then the Shaman takes Ensnaring Shadows followed by Stygian Seed, and he's dead immediately. I know DPS like to tunnel vision a lot, but these interrupts are very important here. This was the first time I dropped kind of low there. I still only got to use Fortifying Brew as my only defensive. I didn't really need to use much. This healer was pretty good at keeping me topped up, which is kind of strange considering the fact that Brewmasters don't do well with a lot of healers. Well, a couple of healers like priests and druids are kind of hard to keep us up. And again here, collecting aggro, interrupting the Shadow Mage to try to pull him closer to the next pack. But they haven't spawned in yet, and again, they interrupted that. That's great. Pull them in closer, and then you lust. You have to make sure you lust because these guys can take me down pretty fast. And at the same time, they can take everyone else down if they're uninterrupted. Part of one of the reasons why I like Master of Harmony is the double Celestial Brew. That with fast brewing, the talent that I take, the cooldown is so short that I can pretty much get a Celestial Brew back up in 4 Keg Smashes, 3-4 Keg Smashes, and that obviously comboed in with the Blackout Kick. But the damage mitigation is so good. I'll post my healing done meters at the end so you guys can see how much it absorbed, but it absorbed a pretty good amount for Celestial Brew. Here's spinning Jade Kick for some aggro again, interrupting this caster, making sure that nobody dies. This Shadow Priest did really well in interrupts, so I appreciate it. Him and the Druid were both a duo, so they did a pretty good job in this dungeon.
Only one more ship in the Dawnbreaker is ours again.
Here, as soon as I land, I pop the defensive, just because I know I'm gonna take a lot of damage, dampen harm right away, just to make sure that I don't get one shot by everything here. As you can see, I get a little bit low, but again, it's that combination Celestial Brew into Purifying Brew into Expel Harm that can top you off if you need. And again, here I'm targeting the commander just to try to interrupt, but I kind of had to use it on the web mage, so I was hoping one of the other players would interrupt it, and they did. Here I got a phone call, so I had to mute the in-game audio just because I forgot that my headset microphone was on and you can kind of hear it through the recording. So there's no audio here. But this is all pretty straightforward, just DPSing these down, making sure that nobody dies. That was kind of funny to see. The druid had this macro that would tell us when they needed mana. This fight we started off really
Defensive.
well. And again, Celestial Brew into Purifying Brew into Expel Harm, and it tops you off. You don't really need anything else other than that. But as you saw
And
on my
so
layout, I
the
had two
shadows
defensive
bless
trinkets.
you.
There, the Shadow Priest died because he
Watch
stopped
your step.
cast,
Might be
and the
unending.
beam caught up to him. And again, I'm trying to rotate the speaker away from those two circles, just so that when the beam pops up, everybody has space to run around.
Feel night's embrace.
Defensive.
And again, Celestial Brew, wait for the hit, Purifying into Expel Harm, and you get topped off right away. Especially if the healer's already
Watch
has
your
some
step.
heals on you or
Into
some
the
hots on
dawn.
you, it'll definitely top you off immediately. But as you can see, the hit is still pretty
The
big because
shadows bless
my normal
you.
Celestial Brew absorbs around 900k damage, and I got dropped down there
Defensive.
to around 20% health. Well, 30% health there, as you can see. But I tapped myself up all the way up to 95.
Watch your step. Run.
Oh, Sunny Shadow!
The DPS was pretty good. The Shadow
Lost control
Priest
of her magic. Get
lost a
out of
lot of
there!
damage there with that death, but the Shaman and the Red, I mean, come on, their DPS is amazing.
Watch your step.
Here into the dawn. Feel night's embrace.
Defensive.
Here I messed up on the positioning,
Prevails.
and our Chamois died because of it. And then I almost died. I had to pop a Fortifying Brew and a Dampen Harm, just because I couldn't see where I was going. So
The
again,
shadows
the ship is
bless
so
you.
big and you have so much space to use.
Watch your step.
Just don't do what I did, because then it became a mess there, but luckily we were able to recover from this.
Defensive.
Feel night's embrace.
Part of the reason why I took the two defensive trinkets was there I used the refraction model,
Watch your step.
and I already had the molten furnace trinket on, so it's a lot of absorbs.
Defensive.
I feel like that's part of the problem Brewmasters have. They take too much
The
burst
shadows
damage,
bless you. It's too far
and you
away.
can only purify so much stagger that there's really not much you can do after your
Watch
purifies
your
are off.
step.
And it's part of the reason why, again, why I do fast brewing. Just that 20%
Defensive.
off
Night.
on the purifying and on the celestial really helps.
She's lost control of her magic. Get out of there.
And here everybody's good. The druid is good in mana, so we start pulling. And again, you can pull all of these safely and you will still time it. Again, don't allow yourself to have more than 8 deaths, 8 or 9 deaths, and you can definitely time it with at least a minute left. Here I was pulling them safe
your
just
step.
because it's a 12, I'm doing Master of Harmony.
Crowd control.
I don't know how hard it's going to be for the druid to heal me,
Interrupt.
so I kind of didn't want to make it any harder on them.
Crowd control.
But as you'll see in a little
Watch your
bit, the
step.
shaman is going to let me know, hey, can we speed it up? And I do speed it up a little bit, and having all my defensives definitely help.
Watch your step. Frontal.
See, this is how you know you have a good group, because the DPS is standing behind the two tacticians, so you don't have to worry about the
Frontal.
frontal hitting any of them. So that's always a good indication of how well these people know the instance. And again, it's a lot of these small things that make a difference, especially in these plus 12s, because it's a huge jump from an 11 to a 12. The damage, the health that the enemy mobs have. There, the shaman told me to pull more, and I said sure. I knew the tactician was about to die, and I had two on
Gruntle.
me. And again, trying to rotate away from them so I can pull more. This was a bold pull, but again, they wanted to pull
Gruntle.
more, so I decided to go for it. There, the frontal probably could have killed someone if they didn't know what they were doing,
Watch
but
your step.
again, these guys know the dungeon, so they know to keep an eye out for everything.
Gruntle. Crowd control. Interrupt. Gruntle. Watch your step. Crowd control.
Again, they're clearing all of that stagger because of the fast brewing. Definitely helped a lot. I'm sitting on two celestial brews, but I'm trying to focus more on cleansing the stagger.
Watch your
I
step.
probably should have used the celestial and then cleanse more stagger. Probably
Gruntle.
would have been the smarter thing to do. Dare try to chi burst for damage, but again, not very smart of me. The healer was really good at keeping me up as well.
Watch your step.
The
Gruntle.
DPS was great as well too. And here I take this slow because I noticed that the healer has low mana, so I ask if they're okay so that I can continue chain pulling. And she's great, so I continue to chain pull. I look, notice that her mana is great, and then I pull these again. Always targeting the Dark Caster because we need to interrupt.
Gruntle.
And trying to maintain the frontal away from my DPS to sort of back up
Watch
into
your
anyone.
step. Gruntle. Crowd control. Watch your step.
So here, once
Gruntle.
the caster is dead, I begin to position myself for pulling the next mobs. I only pull
Watch
once
your
the
step.
frontal is on cooldown because I can risk frontaling my entire team as I'm pulling.
Gruntle.
So again, there the tactician does a frontal and the shadow's dead, so now I move into the next pack.
Gruntle. Watch your step.
Something was going on in my guild chat as well. I caught up on it later, but yeah,
Watch your step.
everybody was barking like a dog, I guess, for some reason. And again, in my 11, the problem was that
Run.
there was a hunter that was cutting me off from rolling away. This, everybody stayed behind the mini boss. So I had all of the space in front of the mini boss to roll away. There I pinged to be careful not to pull anything back there. So I moved a little bit to the right to make sure that I had space to roll away and that they had space to move if they needed to.
Run.
And again, it's always the same combination when you have to mitigate a lot of damage. Celestial Brew, Purify into Expel Harm. It's super basic, but it's super effective as well. And you're purifying so much
Run.
that you're stacking up a lot of purifies for the Celestial Brew. So instead of it absorbing 900k, mine was absorbing close to 2.4 mil. I have a weak aura there that tells me how much absorbs it's doing.
They tried to defile our faith. Instead, you have weakened their commander.
Again, I was waiting for the healer to have mana because this pull is hard. And here again, pop a defensive as soon as I land, I almost get one shot, I think.
There's
There.
a lieutenant in my house.
This was always a hard pull if you're not ready for
AoE
it.
incoming.
And of course the shadows always coming in. This one I panicked a little bit just because
Frontal.
I felt like I wasn't ready with my defensives and I was taking too much spiky damage and I end up dying. But that's very much close to when all of the ads are dead and it's just the mini boss
AoE
that's left.
incoming. Frontal.
And again, this probably would have been
AoE
a harder
incoming.
pull
Frontal.
if I was Shado Pan, just because all of that damage there, you see? I probably wouldn't have been able to stagger all of that and purify all of that. I probably would have died a lot earlier. And here I used my taunt on the ad that died, so I had to hope that my DPS didn't die while the mini boss chased them around.
AoE incoming.
Luckily, my daughter
And of
her
course
children are
executing
safe.
whenever I can, because it
Weaken
clears
the
all of your
commander and
stagger.
cleanse my home.
So for example,
Thank
if I hit him for 8 million, it'll double that and clear all of that stagger. Which obviously you're not gonna have
They've
60
taken the inn
million
as a foothold,
damage worth of
and a
stagger, but
lieutenant
still,
leads them.
it's nice to have a 0% bar for the next pulls. Because I know the damage is really good, I decided to just pull the mini boss straight into it. We're looking good on time. I know that we're going to have enough time to do the next boss before we go back in the ship. We're only sitting at 4 deaths. Again, we can't try not to aim for more than 8 deaths. It's such a weird benchmark, but it's what I've noticed works here. If you have more than 8 deaths and the DPS isn't that great, that the key is gone. You might as well not continue.
Frontal.
I also noticed that my DPS is a little bit low, and that mainly has to do with the fact that I'm using 2 defensive trinkets here, both absorbs. So I'm not outputting a lot of damage as if I had the Mech Queen's Mandate. That's close to 90 million damage overall at the end of a run. So as you can see, that's a good chunk of damage that I'm missing out on.
Watch your
We've weakened the Nerubians' foothold on the town and their commander.
And here, because this team knows what they're doing, I kind of don't have to explain. So they know that they have to aim it down the path behind me. I pull the boss right there just because I can roll down next to the sandbox and fly back in again. Here I go in to collect aggro on all of these shadows.
watch your
I'm pretty sure that they have a delayed reaction to the threat generated. I popped a spinning jade into a keg smash and they weren't aggroing onto me. But luckily the DPS is really good and we were able to get it down fast. Here I'm trying to help heal. I know that I'm taking damage, but I would much rather my DPS live than I top myself off.
run.
Here I go to collect them again. Everybody
Watch
again
your
really stacked up together, so it makes it a little bit easier to pull them.
interrupt 1.
I used my Black Ox statue there to collect aggro on all of them,
AOE incoming.
but again the DPS is too good. Here the healer dies, but we were able to get battle res on him.
Run.
And again, you can't really blame them. It's a very healing intensive fight, especially if we're not using defensives and we're taking damage and avoiding all of these AoE things. It's a little bit chaotic, but the druid did really well.
AOE incoming.
Again, I'm popping my Vivify on the healer whenever it's up. Just an extra 800k to 1 mil heal definitely helps.
Run. Interrupt incoming.
Dara had to pop a defensive to make sure that the healer wasn't focusing on me and focusing on everyone else. I'm pretty sure the paladin laid on hands on himself. So everybody has to kind of do their part to make sure that we don't die. There the orb was misplaced, but luckily it didn't kill anyone. The boss is slow and I'm spamming my execute there, touch of death. Even with 1 DPS down, it was still a new record, considering it's a 12 and my last record was on an 11. Still by 0.7 seconds, but something.
We'll drive the remainder of this shadowy lot from the city. Wait, no! They've sent a force backup and retaken the Dawnbreaker!
So here, the healer's ready, and we pull. Normally here, I wanted to stay as close as I could to the healer, just because there's a lot of AoE that the melee take, and there's really no purpose of running around to the other side of the boat. So we just stayed together there on the healing circle.
Spread.
As you can see, the healer did a really good job topping everyone off after these AoEs. There I did an exploding keg to get some aggro, especially the Shadow Walkers. If you don't get aggro on them right away, they will one-shot any other DPS. There again, the Shaman dies, but that's because of the AoE that he had. And there I'm trying to pick all of them. Again, the Shadow Walker is the main one you want to get because that Umbral attack that they do can basically two-shot anything in these plus 12s.
Spread.
The DPS did a really good job clearing up these ads here, so we didn't have a lot of them up at a time. That can get a little bit chaotic when you have a lot of them up, especially since they're casters. Trying to get interrupts and trying to get them all piled up into one place, it's just too much. They casted the Umbral Shield, that Dark Caster, but we managed to get them down. And again, you don't have to initiate or engage the boss right away. So I waited for the healer to make sure that we were all topped off, and then I asked, "Are you guys ready?" before we begin. Because if you go straight into the boss while you have ads up, you can potentially cause a wipe if the healer isn't ready and people are already taking damage and they're pretty low. Especially since Rashanan does a lot of AoE damage. So one of the things I prioritize in Rashanan is helping out with the healing. Just because I know that it can be very hard on them if they have to carry the kegs and then we have the AoE. It's a lot of damage on the DPS and it can be too much for the healer to do. So I'll always try to cast my instant Vivify on the healer or a DPS that I see is getting low. That's why my
AoE
DPS
incoming.
was like sub 400k here. I mean, I feel like it's a small price to pay just to make sure that the real DPS and the healer are up. It's a better trade-off in the end. As you can
Watch your
see there,
step.
the Shadow Priest was getting a little bit low, but I topped them off, or helped top them off with my Vivify.
This darkness is deadly. The Lamplighter's blessing will keep you safe.
I've had it happen to me that while I'm trying to fly to the safe zone, I don't have enough time and I die. This happened to me on an 11 I tried before, and it was really embarrassing. So I try to collect at least one orb before I fly over to the safe spot. It's a little bit noobish, but I'm a little bit traumatized from that. And we didn't have any battle reses, and we pretty much lost the key because I died. The DPS and the heals were pretty good, but they have racked up a couple of deaths, and that was my one and only death in that 11. So imagine how bad I must have felt. And again here, I'm trying to top off the person who gets the rolling acid, or at least help him out with my Vivify. I know that I'm not going to die because I have my defensives. I still have my two trinkets, as you can see, and I still have Celestial Bow. I always
Watch
pop
your
one
step.
off whenever I can, and I know that I need the damage. Just because the tick
AoE incoming.
gives 20% damage, I think it is, to my attacks. Well, I mean, I'll take any damage I can get. Before this, I threw my chi burst straight into the DPS just to help heal again.
Watch your step.
I always try to stack up my Master of Harmony passive. I forget the name right now, but you stack it up to 5 and it increases the damage and healing that your magic spells do. So, in other words, my Breath of Fire, my Exploding Keg, or my Chi
Watch your
Burst.
step.
So, Chi Burst doing an extra 15% damage and healing is pretty big. As you see in my damage charts in the end, I was creating for around 2 million with Chi Burst. So it's a pretty good buff.
Watch your step.
And this is all pretty much
AoE
straightforward.
incoming.
Just avoid dropping the webs near anyone, defensives if you can on the AoE, and then just DPS. There I threw my Chi Burst at our Druid and the Shadow Priest just to help out with some healing. I don't know how much healing it did, but I hope it helped it anyway.
Watch your step.
Here I feel like the person who took the most damage and kind of died a lot more was the Chamois. I think he probably had half the deaths or maybe more here.
AoE incoming.
It was his key after all, so it would have been a shame if he
Watch
kind
your
of threw
step.
it away. And that's his last stuff of the run. And Roshanon is pretty much defeated here. He's falling at 60%. And that's
AoE
the
incoming.
threshold where he just flies away and we win.
Watch your step.
That's pretty much it. I get caught up here in the webs, but Tiger's List breaks me free. We're almost at the end here. And that's it. That's Dawnbreaker on a 12 Mythic. As you can see, the overall damage they did was over 1 million, and we time it. The route that I picked is a safe one, especially for Brewmasters. And I'll show the meters at the end for healing and damage. As you can see, my damage is normally over 800k with DPS trinkets, but I had to use defensive ones. The refracting did 59 million absorbs, Molten Furnace 26, Celestial Brew 157 million absorbs. So yeah, they're both viable for mythics, it's just how you use the defensives. Catch you on the next one. See you.